Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Expert Talks by InnoVint. I am your host, Lauren Heindel, a retired wine production veteran who now builds community online and in person for folks working in the wine industry. Expert Talks is the place where wine professionals share their unique perspectives on the wine industry in the place that they are true experts. From winemaking to finance, marketing to compliance, we're bringing all these experts to you in these short 20-ish minute episodes. You can expect to walk away with a little more knowledge, equipping you to be a well-rounded wine professional with, new insights to bring to the next industry tasting that you attend to really wow your peers. Anyways, let's get into it. Today, we have Melissa Hackett, who is the owner of Unfiltered Consulting. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thanks for coming and being an expert on today's show. Let's start with you giving me a little bit about your background and how you ended up here.
Sure. My journey in the winemaking industry began over 16 years ago. Over that time, I've had the privilege of working in 2 states across 11 wineries. And my last position actually had me managing all operations for the winery. So from production, harvest, all the way through wholesale, DTC, and events. These
Wow.
experiences provided me with a deep dive into the operational side of not only winemaking, but admin and DTC. And it's introduced me to a variety of technologies that they're starting to reshape our industry. So during this time working hands-on in production, it gave me a chance to firsthand see the challenges and opportunities that wineries face, from streamlining operations to integrating technology. I found myself during this time naturally taking on roles that involved leading change and implementing these upgrades that improved efficiency and quality. And
Nice.
ultimately, these experiences ignited a passion for continuous improvement and innovation, leading me to establish Wine Unfiltered Consulting. And with my consultancy, I'm committed to helping wineries navigate operational challenges and adopt technologies that not only enhance production, but drive sustainable growth for them.
Nice. That's so important these days. Oh my goodness. And a big mission here at InnoVint. So great. Well, today's topic, every wine production person's favorite time of year, bottling, right? Melissa, you will help us understand how to create the most error-free bottling run, everyone's dream, right? So let's kick this off. Melissa, what is the first thing that you look at when you're coming in and you're consulting on bottling efficiency?
So one of the first things I actually like to deep dive on is what is their staging process. And over the years at all of these facilities I've worked at, there's been a lot of just-in-time mentality when it comes to bottling and preparing. It leads to a lot of operational bottlenecks, and there's definitely room for improvement. So I usually look at the staging process first, and I tend to advocate for a productive approach where your bottles, closures, labels, and the wine itself are organized and staged well in advance. So it not only allows for thorough quality checks and making sure your materials are all in line, but it'll help make bottling smooth and error-free the day of.
That's great. That's great. I want to dive a little bit deeper into that just-in-time mindset, because when you say that, it brings me back to my bottling days. So what do you think is an ideal time frame to have all these things kind of organized, ordered, and staged?
Sure. I definitely think bottling can fall into 3 distinct buckets, like your long-term, medium, and short-term timelines. So long-term would be thinking about, do I need to update my labels? Do I need to submit for a COLA with the TTB? What are the lead times with my vendors for my dry goods? Because depending on what's going on in the world and the industry, it can be anywhere from a week to months, right? So having being dialed in with your suppliers is critical. But I'd say an 8 to 12 week process in advance would be ideal. And this would accommodate for government delays and making sure that your suppliers are all dialed in. The medium term, I'd say, would be focusing 2 weeks before bottling. So making sure that your final blend is together, your additions have all gone in, you've stabilized it if you needed to, and setting up bill of materials InnoVint's really good for that. So not only do you have your composition and your costing, but you also have these are the actual things that I'm using for my bottling run. And then short term is the days leading up to it, right? 1 to 2 days. So this And I think this is probably like the most critical point and one that gets overlooked the easiest. So making sure all of your paperwork's together, your QA, QC sheets, any pallet tags, your sticker for the cases, making sure that your dry goods are staged. So everybody is aware of like the flow of bottling, what tank it is, and the materials that they're using for the run.
Great. And I know that you mentioned when we were talking previously that you help wineries build out an SOP, also known as the standard operating procedure, or sort of like a bottling checklist, so to say. What are some of those things that you would include when you are creating that?
Sure. I kind of call it like the bottling Bible. So you'd have your parameters sheet. So that would be anything from the chemistry markers that you want for your wine, your free SO2, your CO2, your DO2s. Is it heat and cold stable? Has it been filtered? And then like the compliance side, right? So the labeling alcohol, the appellation, the materials being used for that, and if it had been approved. And then you move into your quality control measures. So the laboratory sheet for like the day of bottling, one for your operators, because they should be checking things thoroughly. And I went the next step of having one at the palletizer. So somebody was actually opening up a finished box to check everything as we were doing the runs. And then a final sheet I would recommend is like equipment check for startups and operations. So has it been sanitized? What was the ATP swabbing numbers? Did you do a bubble point? What was the number? Any of your nitrogen flows, the PSI settings, all of that would be really important to encompass in this packet, along with your label, the case sticker, and anything else you want to remember from the day of bottling.
Yeah, that is so important. I've been in a situation where wine isn't stable and it's going into bottle that day, or we need to panic sparge in order to get all the CO2 levels up. Not a fun place to be. So it's really great to have everything kind of laid out in a standardized procedure. And well, that leads very naturally into my next question. What are the biggest mistakes, so to say, or the most important things to look for when you're working towards wine readiness for bottling?
Sure. When I think of wine readiness, I ideally think it should be confirmed the day before bottling. That doesn't
Mm,
lead to those delays in the bottlenecks. And we've
yeah.
all like it usually happens with that just in time mentality. Like I'm just filtering and then I'm just like doing my adjustments and barely tasting before things happen, right? So
Hmm.
I typically like I'll run through through those sheets, like has it been filtered? Is it stable? Are all of the gases and adjustments made that needed to happen? Is the wine the correct temperature to go into the bottle so you don't
Oh,
have
yeah.
sweating as you're bottling and the labels are coming off? Um, has the lab confirmed all of these numbers, whether it's internal or external? Establishing like who is responsible for doing the final tasting and signing off on a wine. It can be really critical with larger teams. Um, and then I tend to like think of like what type of filtration do I need for the day of bottling? Like, are you using a bug catcher? Are you using a final filter?
Hmm.
And then making sure that you implement the regular checks on fill levels and your label placements and closures. So it kind of goes back to that like final person on the palletizer being like really important because I've
Hmm.
actually had I've had a bottling run where we've opened up a box, we're looking at things, and there's wine seeping through the foil. And
Everyone's nightmare.
there's none. It's everyone's worst nightmare, right? So like as
Yeah.
you peel back the layers of the onion and you're looking at things, like we realize that our the eyes that catch like when corks are missing was
Mm,
was turned off. It had like failed, so it let the bottle pass through, and we had ended up with wine in the box, and that's like everyone's worst fear.
yeah. That closures mistake is crazy, but I'm sure it happens way more frequently than we'd all like to admit. Now, kind of moving past the wine readiness, what can you do to make sure the entire winery and like the cellar crew is ready for bottling?
I think having like a really robust bottling schedule where you're checking in with your cellar master and your bottling foreman, along with operations, helps make sure that the right tanks are being used, that it's the right wine, the right materials, and the right order, right? Because
Mhm.
like some of the worst things that can happen is like you bottle your Cabernet before your rosé.
Oh,
So like making sure everyone's on the same page is pretty important. Making sure that your materials are staged in a way that
mhm,
makes sense and flows for the facility
mhm.
and that you have everything based on those orders and you consider the space that's required for it.
Nice. There's nothing worse than running around trying to find the box of capsules for the last wine of the day when everyone's ready to go home. I've been there. Not fun. Well, now leaning into your true expertise, what are some of the technologies and softwares that you've worked with and would recommend that really make it the most error-free bottling day?
Sure. Smaller producers tend to benefit from semi-automated lines. So those inspection eyes that I was talking about earlier that should have missed the cork.
Mm,
Um, and those usually take between 8 to 10 people to run on a given day. So a little bit more staff training, definitely making sure your protocols are in line and packaging checks. The medium to larger producers I've seen like fully automated, like, there's just 3 people to run the line. Like it's insane, like the amount of
wow.
cameras and you're just feeding the machine constantly. Um, and then some of the helpful tools along the way for bottling, like in the lab, the FOSS is really like, that's like the Ferrari of your analyzers. Ed Mayo
Yeah,
has what I'd say is like more of like the entry level, like a sedan, like everyone can afford it and use it.
nice.
Um,
Okay.
and the alkalizer, those are things that'll help like streamline your laboratory processes for bottling.
Hmm.
InnoVint is really great for building not only your cost of goods, your blending, bill of materials, bottling work orders, those like helping streamline the processes for compliance and the actual movements itself. And then Vivisly has an inline DO monitoring system, which is really great. So you can actually check in your eyeglasses as the wine's going into the line or throughout the line to see if
Wow.
you're picking up oxygen and where. And I've also used their micro-ox system to help age wines to get them ready for bottling. Some of
Lovely.
the other fun things like Onita Stars unit will help adjust your pH and TA during filtration, so before bottling, or
Mhm.
Velcrin will help if you're wanting to protect from microbial issues if you're not using that final filter.
Nice. So good. Thank you for offering those. I'm wondering, and I have an opinion of my own, but I'm curious what you think are the current industry trends in bottling that you've seen recently take off.
I think there's been an increased popularity in splits, so smaller
Hmm.
formats, and wine
Yeah.
in the can. I think
Mhm.
that there's a shift in 6 packs for premium wines. And I think larger formats are still going to persist as like a status symbol and like, restaurants love to have them.
Yeah, they do. They love those large formats. I definitely agree with those. I think I've seen splits popping up all over, and I know just like among my peers, pulling a couple splits is a little more affordable than buying one nicer bottle of wine. So, yeah. Well, if you have any questions, comments, or want us to go deeper in any of these topics, comment below. And Melissa, if folks have any questions for you, how can they get in contact with you?
I could be found on LinkedIn, or you can send me an email at melissa@wineunfilteredconsulting.com. Maybe it's good to put that in like in the in the
Show
caption.
notes.
It's a mouthful.
Yes, I will put that in the caption. Um, well, great. Thank you so much, Melissa, for your time and your expertise. And thank you for joining me on another episode of Expert Talks from InnoVint, where I chat with wine industry experts on topics from winemaking to compliance to wine marketing and sales. You can check us out on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, as well as a complete video library on innovint.us/expert talks. Until next time, cheers.